Hello and welcome to Alaska's Political Pipeline. I'm political reporter Will Courtney, and sitting down alongside me, Treg Taylor, former Attorney General. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here, Will.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you too. We're talking to all the candidates about, why they're running and the top policy issues. Let me just ask you the first question. What really got you involved in running for governor?
Well, I think it was a unique situation I found myself in here. I've been the Attorney General for the state for 4.5 years, third longest serving Attorney General in the state's history. I had all this experience about getting things done for Alaska, all these projects that I've been involved in, either on the litigation side or helping them get across the finish line. And then being in a unique situation during all 4 years of the Biden administration when Alaska was under attack. 70 executive orders targeting Alaska, having been able to defend the state against his executive actions and doing it successfully. And then working with the incoming Trump administration, helping draft his first day executive order, unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential, and then being able to help him implement that. So right on the cusp of all these amazing projects with knowledge base, with familiarity with the key players, whether it be the Department of Interior, the Department of Energy, getting things done for Alaska, I was really uniquely positioned to jump in and be able to hit the ground day one running as Alaska's next governor to get these projects done that we've been desperately needing for the last 40 years. These are, if you look at the wish list of his first day executive order unleashing Alaska's extraordinary resource potential, it is a wish list of everything Alaskans have been hoping for and wishing for the last 40 years. And right now we have an administration that is focused on Alaska and is allowing Alaska to develop these resources and putting the full weight of the federal government behind these projects and these resource development projects. And so we've got to take full advantage as a state. We can't have somebody in there that's going to be either contrary to this administration or not understand and have a big learning curve as they get into the process for getting things done for Alaskans and Alaskan families, helping relieve the pressure on Alaskan families, providing good paying jobs for Alaskans. So that was really the impetus for getting in the race. It's not something I ever dreamed of doing, but I just found myself in this really unique position to be able to get things done for Alaska. And of course, Alaska's my home. I want to see it prosper. I want to see families staying in Alaska, not young families moving out of the state. And so that was a key focus for me.
When was the moment you decided you wanted to run for governor?
Oh, I can't remember the exact moment. It was more of a process because, honestly, I was pushing back against the thoughts of doing it because I've never considered myself a politician. I've never wanted to be a politician. And so I kept pushing off those thoughts, but those thoughts kept coming to me. And then people started coming to me and said, Treg, we really need you to run. You're a perfect position to move Alaska forward on all these policy issues, get our economy moving again. And then it made it a matter of prayer. It took a lot of prayer for me to finally say, okay, let's get in this race. Because if I got in the race, I was going to get in the race to win the race and to get things done for Alaska. And so it was more of a process rather than an aha moment for me.
And you mentioned your experience as Attorney General for the Dunleavy administration. Tell me a little bit about how that particular experience really translates well to the role of governor.
Oh, it's pretty amazing actually because of the breadth of what our Attorney General does. Now, Attorney Generals are similar throughout the lower 48. But we do a couple really unique things as the Attorney General here. One, we do all the prosecution for the state. And the other thing we do is there is no embedded attorneys within the various departments throughout the state, whether it be the Department of Health or whichever department. And then the governor doesn't have his own attorneys, or at least didn't when I was the Attorney General. And so I provided all that legal advice to all these departments. So I know where the problems are in each department. I know what their hurdles are. I've helped work with them to solve their problems. And the same with the governor's office. What authority does the governor have over education? What authority does the governor have to open public lands for private investment? What authority does the governor have to move the state forward economically? Well, that was what I was advising the governor on, right? And so really uniquely situated me to have the knowledge base, again, to be able to hit the ground running day one, no learning curve, and getting things done for Alaskans.
What do you think this state needs right now in terms of executive leadership?
We have to have better communication. I really think communication is the key. We've got a legislature right now that, there's just a lot of need to work together because we're on the cusp of all these opportunities. And if we're not communicating, we're not working with each other, and we're not building consensus on these projects that I believe are kind of no-duh projects that need to get done on behalf of Alaskans, then we're wasting those opportunities. And so I think communication is the key, both communication with the public, communication and working with the legislature, and then getting those projects and these issues taken care of for Alaskans. That's why people elect us. They elect us to solve problems and to make their lives better. And that's what government should do. And they shouldn't, and if communication's a hurdle, that's too bad.
How do you think the executive needs to be working with the legislature? Obviously, this current administration has been characterized by some opposition with the legislature. The governor set a record for most vetoes in a single session, this most recent session. And you mentioned a no-duh project. I'm sure you're referring to this gas line that's been presented.
Yes.
Over 50 years. It seems like it's very close, but not the votes currently for the current bill that's before us. So tell me a little bit about how the governor needs to be working with the state legislature.
Well, a little bit like I did. So as an attorney general, I had an open door policy. You could disagree with me on a policy issue, and I was still going to have a meeting with you. And that was really instrumental in my understanding of a lot of the issues, because I attributed reasons to a group or a policy position that turned out not to be true. And once you have those conversations, that understanding, then you have the full picture, and then you can move forward on the issue. And that happened time and time and time again as the Attorney General, as I had that open door policy. So, and those meetings aren't always easy, right? Those meetings are some tough meetings, especially when they completely disagree with the position you take or the litigation that you filed. But for me, that was probably the best part about the job, is being able to work with people that disagree with you, come to a consensus, and then move things forward. And that's exactly what we need from the governor's office when it comes to the legislature, being able to work on each other's priorities, figuring out where we can align and where we agree, and then moving those forward instead of focusing more on where we disagree and where we're probably not going to come to consensus.
Yeah. And then seeing some of your ads, as well as just what you started with today, working with the presidential administration. Tell me about how you think the state is really poised to, I believe the term is unleash Alaskan energy.
Yeah, it's unleash Alaska's resource potential, right? That's the name of the executive order. And really, I think it's the first time we've had a president fully appreciate our potential as a state, whether it be from a strategic location, and we're the reason we're an Arctic nation, right? And with the opening of the Arctic and the passage for shipping, that's a huge, huge economic opportunity for Alaskans. It could help reduce the cost of living for Alaskans as those goods are going through our northern border. And then also a president that realizes the potential of our mining, because right now we're in an AI race with China, right? And that AI race needs rare earth elements, critical minerals. And here we are as a state, we have a plethora of that in our state. We have it all over our state. What we don't have is access or the ability to bring it to market. And that's a real shame, because right now we almost wholly rely as a country on those elements and those critical minerals produced by China or Chinese-friendly countries. And so let's get that to market. Let's bring that to bear and make and help support American economy and American ingenuity. And that's what Alaska has to offer. And then on the energy front, I think when it comes to what we've discovered and what we're producing, we've just barely scratched the surface on that. And I am confident that with the right leadership, and here we have a president again that's supporting us in our endeavors to do this, having the right governor, I think we can really jumpstart our economy. We can fill that line right now, even with the two projects, the Willow and the Pica project. We're still not even half full. Even with their additional oil barrels of oil in the pipeline, we're still half full as a pipeline. Let's fill that pipeline. Let's create opportunity for Alaskan families, and let's realize the benefit of the bounty that God has blessed the state with, whether it be minerals or energy or timber, all of the above, right?
Yeah, let's go into policy now. Before we go into some of the top issues facing Alaskans this election cycle, I want to ask you first, what's your top issue going into this election?
Top issue is getting the economy moving. Assuring, because right now that's what I hear. When I'm talking to Alaskans, when I'm knocking on doors, when I'm attending events, people are concerned. Their kids are leaving the state. And I am a father of 6 children, all of which are trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives, and are they going to have to leave the state for that opportunity? Alaska was so great to Jody and I when we were married 27 years ago. It was full of opportunity, and we took advantage of that opportunity. I want our kids and our grandkids to have those same opportunities. We can't just be continuing to watch the state decline and hope for the best. We got to be active, and part of that is making for example, permitting and regulatory environment. We have one of the worst in the U.S. We've been rated the least business-friendly state many years, 7 out of the last 15 years by a publication. You can't have that. We are already remote. Cost of things are just naturally more because of our remote nature and how we don't have the infrastructure in place. And so we've got to make a permitting and regulatory environment that's going to move at the speed of business, that's going to welcome businesses into the state, because those businesses are what create wealth for Alaskan families, create the opportunity for Alaska families.
So let's actually just go there. For economy, obviously, it's one of the top issues. Affordability is one of those big buzzwords that we're seeing a lot of, just very on top of people's mind when you're going to the grocery store, when you're going to the gas station to fill up your tank. And we're in a little bit of an uncertain point in our own state's economy right now with the price of oil, which has been very volatile, both nationally but also in our own state. It's been declining over several years. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how, you're mentioning the big view of making sure that the state has investor-friendly economy. How do you make sure that consumers aren't feeling the pinch?
Right, well, that's the way. When you have a booming economy and we have a building economy, there's opportunity for families, there's jobs for families, there's training for families. And that's the key. And then that opportunity is going to bring cheaper and more affordable energy, right? Reliable, affordable energy. That's the key words, affordable and reliable. Those businesses that want to come into our state and do business are looking for that, because that is the basis of the cost of all goods. So whether it's gas at the store or groceries at the store, or what you're paying for housing in the state, it is all related to the cost of energy. And so the more affordable you can make that and reliable, and you have the right regulatory and permitting environment, you're going to see businesses grow in the state, like the smaller businesses grow, and then other businesses come into the state. And that's key for reducing costs, right? Because you create those efficiencies. And so you want to bring the cost of living down, grow your economy.
Yeah, and we've seen this presented by the governor, by the legislature several times, a long-term fiscal plan. The governor presented one this current session, didn't seem to get a lot of traction. It included that seasonal sales tax in it too. Do you have a long-term fiscal plan? And if so, what does that kind of look like?
Well, I can tell you any long-term fiscal plan that I have is not going to include raising taxes on Alaskans that are already making decisions of whether or not they're leaving the state. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in Fairbanks. That cold spell was really hard, not only from a mental perspective, but also from a fiscal perspective. I talked to multiple people from Fairbanks that said that their utility rates were more than their mortgage for the winter, and it's unsustainable for those families. They cannot withstand that. And so they're making decisions right now of, do I move to Tennessee? Do I move to Texas? And we have to keep that in. We have to keep our families here, because that is our workforce, right? And that is our future. And so the more affordable you can make that future, the more we're going to encourage families to be here.
Yeah, and let's keep on with energy and resource development. Obviously, it's critical for our state's economy. Yeah. How do you have any policy proposals that really can help really make sure that Alaska's energy and resource potential is really being reached to its fullest potential?
Yeah, it really comes down to a regulatory and permitting format and scheme that moves at the speed of business. Businesses who, when they make billion-dollar investments in the state, if you look at the price of the Pica project or the Willow project, it's extraordinary amounts of money to take that to even before you get first oil. Now, Pica we just saw first oil from a couple months ago, but there was billions of dollars invested in that scheme. And so if you have a regulatory environment that delays you a year, that investment, I mean, you can only put so much into an investment before it's a loser and you're going to walk away, or you're going to have such a bad taste in your mouth that you're not coming back to the state to develop further resources. And so we've got to do better at that. We've got to be competitive nationally. We are not. And those are the types of regulatory and permitting reforms. And these are simple things. Like when you go to buy a new house, with some changes that were made for on septics, for example, just add a couple $1,000s to the price of the house because of that regulatory change. Was that regulatory change needed? We need to look at all those things, because the more regulatory burden, the higher everything costs in the state, including housing, including the money you're paying for utilities. And so we need to, we have a responsibility as a state to regulate and to make sure things are safe and compliant, but we also should be encouraging business at the same time. And right now it feels, and as a small business owner, I felt from the state licensing and permitting the burden of that and how much that affects our decision making is whether we're not going to grow this business, whether or not we're going to take on this project is almost related to how fast I can get that permitting and whether or not that timeline works. And so the more you can decrease the red tape in the state, the better off Alaskan families are going to be.
Tell me how you plan to decrease that red tape. Is that going to be working with the legislature? Is that just in the bureaucracy itself, which the governor has control over?
Yeah. It's going to be a mixture of both, right? Because the executive, we have the strongest governor in the United States. That governor, he or she appoints every commissioner, every department head, right? And that goes for most boards and commissions within the states as well. And so he has the ability, or she has the ability, to go out, and he has that ability on the regulatory side, right? And the permitting side to make those changes. Now, there's some things that, because of requirements of statute, you're going to have to work with the legislature on to ease some of those burdens that don't make sense for our state. But for the most part, the governor has the authority to do it and can get a lot of that done without the need to involve the legislature. But there will be times when we look at a statute and we go, why does it require this 180-day waiting period? What's the purpose of that? Does that really serve Alaskans' interest? And if it doesn't serve Alaskans' interest, let's reduce that to a manageable time. And so then you would go to the legislature and say, hey, look, let's change this. And so it'll be a little bit of a both.
And a big part of this formula, too, is economic diversification. It's something I've heard from a lot of different candidates on what the state ultimately needs, really changing what industries we have in this state. Are there any particular industries you think could really thrive here in Alaska?
Well, I mean, we don't even have to invent new industries. The current industries that are here are wanting to expand. And whether that be, I'll just give you an example, our military bases. We are strategically positioned for a major growth with those military bases. And we're seeing some growth, but they're constrained by the amount and affordability of energy and whether it's reliable or not. And so by creating redundant grid systems, by creating cheaper and more affordable, reliable energy, you're gonna see bigger growth within those bases. And as we put in icebreaker ports throughout the state, it's gonna be the same thing. It's gonna be, do we have the energy to do what we need to do, and is it reliable, and is there a redundant system? So those are the questions like the Department of War is asking right now. And if the answers to those questions are yes, we're going to see even greater expansion than what we're already seeing. And that's just one industry. Oil and gas the same way. I mean, we saw what happened in the NPRA, right? National Petroleum. Like, we had a record-breaking leasing there a few months back. And it's because they both saw an administration on the federal level that was supportive of what they're doing, and they saw support from the state level. And the combination of those two things, we saw a lot of interest in those leases. We saw Exxon recommit to the state in a big way. We saw Shell come back to the state. I don't know if you were in the state when Shell left, but I was working in the oil and gas industry when Shell left the state. I was in the meeting when Shell said we're leaving the state, and it was like a gut punch because we're seeing a major producer leave the state. And now they've come back in a big way through that leasing program. And so we are on the cusp of greatness as a state, and we just need the leadership to get that over the finish line.
Well, let's talk about leadership to get something over the finish line. On the day we're talking, the third special session on the gas line has begun. Now, this conversation will come out a week from today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you've thought of this whole process, seeing it unfold outside of the government, right? Mm-hmm. Seeing it unfold. I'm certain you were part of some of those conversations when this thing was really starting to pick up some momentum, and really we're in a place where it's uncertain. A lot of lawmakers also tell me it's going to be up to the next governor to make sure this pipeline becomes a reality. So tell me, one, what you kind of think of this whole process, and two, what are your thoughts on the future of the gas line, especially if you become governor? It might be up to you to make it happen.
Right. No, I think the gas line is one of those projects that would transform Alaska, just in the same way that our oil pipeline did. If you think back in the day, how much has that oil pipeline improved the lives of Alaskans? And it's immeasurable, right? It's just a huge, gigantic leap. And that's the same thing. That's the potential of this gas line. I mean, we have, I'll just give you an example. Right now, our Asian allies rely almost wholly on LNG, liquefied natural gas, passing over the Strait of Hormuz. And so they're being constrained energy-wise right now because 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas passes over the Strait of Hormuz. If we had that pipeline in place and we were shipping LNG like the plan is, we could have supplied the losses to Japan and South Korea combined through that pipeline. And it's through uncontested waters. It's a shorter shipping date. We don't have to rely on 10-day waits on each side of the Panama Canal. It just makes a ton of sense to get done. But also for Alaskans, we're facing an energy shortfall. And it's going to affect all of Alaska. It's not just a rail belt shortage, because when utility rates increase along the rail belt because of a shortage of gas, and we're shipping in LNG instead of exporting it like we should be, that's going to, with the power cost equalization, it's going to affect every rural area in Alaska as well. And so we've got to get this right. We've got a choice of whether or not we are willing to move forward with a project that has potential to transform Alaska, or we're going to sit on our hands and say, well, I guess we have to ship in LNG from other places in order to power Alaska, which is a shame. We are a gas-rich state, and it would be a real sad day when we have to ship in LNG. By the way, if we ship in LNG, the estimates I've heard, 25%. Just add 25% to your utility rates, and that's just your utility rates, because I've already talked about how the price of energy affects the price of every other cost and good in the state. And so we've got to get this done for Alaska. I was a little bit, I wish the legislature had dealt with this the very first thing in their regular session, but they didn't. They held it to the very end, and now we've just seen it move and move and move. And we need to get this done. Alaskans want this overwhelmingly, and it's going to be a benefit to Alaska. We've got to start saying yes to these projects rather than no, or we need more study, right? Here's the opportunity. World events, we have a president who supports it. We have an administration that supports it. We have a public that supports it. Let's get it done.
Last two questions on policy, one being public safety concerns. There's a lot of different public safety concerns in this state. I'm thinking not only of South Central, but also the more rural parts of the states. Lots of very different public safety concerns. Tell me a little bit about how you have planned to approach public safety as governor.
Well, public safety, I'm going to approach it much in the same way that I did as the Attorney General. You know, I'm really proud of my record as Attorney General, working with law enforcement. When I came in, I really felt a burden. We were ranked dead last in the nation as far as rates of sexual assault. And we had crime rates that were pretty high in areas. And so we really focused on it. We worked with law enforcement on those issues, and we were able to bring those rates of sexual assault down 25% during my time as the Attorney General. We're seeing crime at 40-year lows. Now, there's still a lot of ways to go. For example, we are still the worst state in the nation, even decreasing it by 25%. And so we've got to continue to invest in law enforcement, continue to invest and work together with our federal counterparts to solve some of these issues that we're seeing. Another example of this is on the drugs that are coming into the state. You know, as the Attorney General, I worked both the law enforcement side of that and on the civil side of that. So I went after the drug companies who lied about how addictive opioids were and how destructive opioids were. And I brought in $100 million to the state to help address the epidemic of people that are addicted to those substances, right? And so hopefully we're going to use that $100 million in a way that's going to reduce the Alaskans and give them an opportunity to get out of those addictions. But we have to work together in order to do those things. And I have a proven record as the Attorney General of getting things done on behalf of Alaskans by working with others. And so that's what I'm going to bring to the governor's office. We're going to further reduce drug overdoses in the state. We're going to get serious about how we combat drugs coming into the state. I've got a plan for that.
Last policy question, ranked choice voting. It's on the ballot for Alaskans this year. What are your thoughts on ranked choice voting?
Oh man, even if you can somehow feasibly defend the system, the results are telling. We have reduced confidence in our election. We have reduced the number of people voting in our elections has decreased since ranked choice voting came in. And we have almost well over a doubling of the ballots are being thrown out because they're being filled out incorrectly from the previous system. So those three things alone tell you it's a bad system for Alaskans, and we've got to change it. I'm a firm yes on getting rid of ranked choice voting, and I think it is an absolutely necessary thing for the state to do moving forward.
Yeah. Two more questions to wrap up our conversation today. First one, why should Alaskans vote for you?
Again, I've talked about my record. Like, there's a lot of people that talk about what they're going to do, but pick an issue. You know, your viewers can pick an issue and they can go see exactly what I did as the Attorney General on there. I'm not just talking the talk. I've walked the walk. I'm a proven fighter on behalf of Alaskan and Alaskan issues and defending our state. Look at my record when Biden passed 70 executive actions against the state, trying to shut us down and destroy our way of life. Look at my record in defending that. I was very successful in defending against those actions and preserving for Alaskans, because that's what it should be. Alaskans deciding our future, right? Not some bureaucrat or president sitting in Washington, D.C. We know what's best for our state. We know what's best for our families, and I'm going to defend that as your next governor. And we're gonna move the state forward. And again, so I would just encourage your listeners out there to look at my record, look at what we're talking about, and make their choices.
Treg Taylor, what does it mean to be Alaskan?
Oh man, it means we are fiercely independent. We moved to Alaska for those reasons, like fiercely independent, self-sufficient, we're accountable, and we need to bring and embrace those back into state government. We need to be efficient, we need to be accountable, and if we can do that in state government, we can offer better services to Alaskans, and we can relieve some of the budgetary burden that the state is.
Former Attorney General Treg Taylor, thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it.